Got that? Now, it's a 2.5-year journey that will see a 25-year-old woman from the Midlands paddle and cycle all the way around the world on her own. She's raising money for charity and running school projects along the way via satellite phone, email and her own website. She says she owes her record-breaking non-stop solo mission to her family. Our sports reporter Kamian Zerum went to the Thames to see her off.
A last hug for Mum? No, maybe time for just one more. For this is no average afternoon on the water. This 25-year-old lab technician from Rutland is paddling and cycling around the world. Her friend will kayak with her till they get to France, and then she's on her own. So, 3 continents, 2 oceans, and an awful lot of paddling. If everything goes according to plan, Sarah Oulton will be back here in London in one piece in 2.5 years' time. After a quick kayak from London to Calais, she'll cycle through Central Asia and China to Russia. Then it's back on the kayak to Japan, where she'll cycle south and sit out the winter. Come spring next year, her biggest challenge, a solo row across the Pacific. Winter 2012, she'll cycle through the Canadian Rockies to New York, and then in spring 2013, she'll row back across the Atlantic into London.
We've just capsized. I've only just put my helmet on. I have a thumping headache.
Sarah Oulton is the youngest woman to have rowed across an ocean, from Australia to Mauritius in 2009. She capsized on the open sea, and she capsized on a reef coming into shore. Now she's on an expedition no one has ever tried before, where waves can loom high as 4-story buildings.
I could die. You know, that's the crux of it, I think. And obviously we'll do all that we can to make sure that doesn't happen, but it's the unexpected things, isn't it? You know, I could go under the wheels of a truck or a car, or something really inane could happen that means that I cop it.
Sarah's father suffered crippling arthritis and died young. His only daughter looked for ways to raise money for the charities who'd helped him. She took up rowing, even though she is apparently scared of deep water.
I think the getting into the water and worrying about, you know, what's going to eat your toes, even though you know that nothing's going to eat your toes, is just something that's always been there. And that's the closest I've been to a ship for 118 days.
But the real challenge, months on her own in a boat, thousands of miles from everywhere. How do you prepare somebody for something like that?
I think the isolation is a real factor. When she was on the Indian, there were days, there were actually weeks when she didn't speak to anybody directly. So dealing with being on your own is a big deal. And I think that's almost a personality thing, whether you can manage that or not on your own.
Actually, I quite enjoy the solitude of the ocean. I've got a satellite phone so I can ring home and, you know, say hi to people. I've got email contact, sort of in and out a couple of times a day probably. But for the most part, I love the perspective that being by yourself gives you.
Her elder brother has another slant on Sarah's extraordinary solo mission. She's stubborn, he says, and he'll miss her.